Hi, my name is Mihai and I am part of the development team here at QiTASC. In this video I'm going to show you how to execute test cases inside intaQt projects. For this purpose I have prepared a small project inside which we have two feature files. The first one performs a simple search on Google and checks that first search result matches a text that we want, while the second one reads the temperature from a thermostat display and compares it against unexpected value. For this one we have two examples. We read the values from display 1 and check that it's 20 degrees Celsius, and we check for the second one, the display 2, to have a temperature of 30 degrees Celsius. Going back to this one, let's execute it. We do this by right-clicking inside the editor and choosing the run feature. We see all tests have passed, but we also want to see which scenarios and steps were executed. Therefore, we have to toggle the show pass test buttons. And as expected, we have two scenarios, both with different values that we have chosen for our test case. In intaQt, we can also execute multiple feature files, so not only single ones. We do this by choosing the directory under which to execute the feature files, right-click on it, and then we can run all features inside here. As you see, 3 scenarios were executed. One of them failed at this step, and all subsequent steps after a failing step will just be skipped, will be ignored. They are not executed. What happens when we execute a test case in this manner is that intaQt Studio creates a default run configuration, which in most of the cases is sufficient, but under some circumstances we might want to customize the test run according to our needs. So we do this by going to the edit configurations sections. We had 2 test runs, and for each of those intaQt Studio created the default run configurations. I'll go through each items inside the configurations and explain them one by one for now. We have the name of the run configuration. This you can choose freely, but it has to not collide with other configurations that we already have. The feature file or directory is a relative path starting from the project root that points to the feature file or to the directory that we want intaQt to execute. Next, we have our hostname and port for the intaQt server that we want our test to run on. We can choose the hostname and the port if we have custom intaQt installations. The tags, it is very important part. By default, you see this not ignored, meaning intaQt will always execute tests that are not annotated with the ignored annotations. Let me show you how this works. I'll close the run configuration, and if we go back to the Google search feature that we have, say we know that for some reason this feature always fails, so we will exclude it from execution by annotating it with ignored. And next time we run the same test, we see that this scenario was no longer executed. On the other hand, if we want to execute some specific tests that are annotated with something, for example, let's take the scenario when we want to execute all ignored files inside our project. So I just have to delete this tilde and apply the configuration. And when I run it, it runs only this annotated test as we expected. Of course, this test fails, but it's interesting for us now to see why it fails. We have here these 2 arguments, the query and the expected first result name. Those are expected to be references inside context objects for our test run. The problem here is that, as you also see inside the log, the query and the expected first result name are not yet defined inside our project. That's why we cannot resolve those properties. One approach to fixing this is to define them as context objects inside our project configuration. Let me do that quickly. So I just take those values and define them inside our configuration context objects. For the query, I give, for example, QiTASC, and I expect the first search result to be our website, QiTASC, which has the title QiTASC, the magic of testing. Okay, now when I save it and run again, I see that it started typing QiTASC, and it succeeded because everything fit together. So the first search result was the one that we wanted. Now, this is something static, so we cannot change it during runtime, but we have this concept of parametrized test cases where we can override configurations for that specific test run at runtime. So in this next section of the configuration here, the configuration items, we can place whatever configuration we want that will overwrite the default configuration that currently is active in the project. Let's say we want something new for our context objects and we want to override this value, for example, not to be QiTASC the magic of testing, but just QiTASC the magic of testing 2, for example, which will fail, of course. It overrides the value and it indeed fails. Again, searches, reads the value, and at the final step where it verifies that the two values match, it fails as expected. Yeah, so that pretty much covers our topic for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Thank you.